Lee Jinho stepped off the transport ship and looked up at the massive building in front of him. The Galactic Military Academy stretched high into the purple sky of Nexus Prime. The building was made of strange black metal that seemed to shine with its own light. Students from different worlds walked around the entrance. Some had blue skin, others had extra arms, and a few looked like walking rocks. Jinho carried his small bag and walked toward the main gate. He was nervous. Earth had only recently joined the galactic community, and humans were still new to most aliens. This was the first time humans had been invited to study at the academy. Only 4 humans had been chosen from all of Earth. A tall alien with gray skin and 4 eyes stopped him at the gate. "Name and species," the guard said in a deep voice. "Lee Jinho, human," he replied. The guard looked at a glowing screen. "Dormitory Block 7, Room 42. Report to Instructor Korvax tomorrow morning." The guard pointed to a building on the left side of the campus. Jinho walked across the large courtyard. Other students stared at him as he passed. Some whispered to each other in languages he did not understand. A few pointed at him with curious looks. Humans were clearly still a strange sight here. The dormitory was quieter than the main courtyard. Jinho found his room and put his bag on one of the 2 beds. His roommate had not arrived yet. The room was simple, with 2 beds, 2 desks, and a large window that showed the academy's training fields. A knock at the door made him turn around. 3 humans stood in the hallway, and Jinho felt relief wash over him. He was not alone after all. "You must be Jinho," said a young woman with short black hair. "I am Kim Mirai. These are Park Dongyuk and Choi Soman." She pointed to a tall young man with glasses and a shorter woman with determined eyes. "It is good to meet other humans here," Jinho said with a smile. "We should stick together," Soman said. "I heard some stories about how aliens treat new species in this place." Dongyuk pushed his glasses up his nose. "I read the academy records. The failure rate for new species is very high in the first year." They spent the evening talking about Earth and their families. Mirai came from a military family in Seoul. Her grandfather had been a general and her father was a colonel. She had trained in combat since she was young. Donghyuk was from Busan and had studied engineering before coming here. Soman was from a small town and had won a fighting tournament to earn her spot at the academy. Jinho told them he was from one of Earth's outer colonies. His family were farmers, but he had always been good at solving problems in new ways. The academy had chosen him after he scored high on their creativity tests. The next morning, all 4 humans walked to their first class together. The classroom was huge, with seats arranged in a circle. Students from many different species sat around the room. Jinho saw the rock-like Vorthak students sitting together. Their bodies were made of living crystal that changed colors when they moved. The Parathi students had red skin that glowed like hot metal. The Zephyrian students looked more like machines than living beings, with metal parts mixed into their flesh. Instructor Korvax entered the room, and all talking stopped. He was massive, even bigger than the largest human. His skin was dark green, with scars covering his arms and face. His eyes were yellow and seemed to look right through each student. 2 curved horns grew from his forehead. "Welcome to Weapon Mastery," Korvax said in a voice like thunder. "This class will test everything you think you know about war and survival." He walked around the circle of students, looking at each one. "Every species believes their way of fighting is the best. The Vorthak think their crystal weapons are perfect. The Parathi believe fire conquers all. The Zephyrians trust their machines above all else." Korvax stopped in front of the human students. "And what do humans believe?" he asked. Mirai spoke up. "We believe in adapting to any situation, sir." The instructor made a sound that might have been laughter. "We will see about that." He moved to the center of the room. "In this class, you will learn about weapons from across the galaxy. You will study how different species approach combat. You will understand why some weapons work and others fail." A Vorthak student raised a crystal hand. "Will we build weapons, instructor?" "You will do more than build," Korvax replied. "You will create. You will forge. You will prove that your species deserves to be called warriors." The class spent the next few hours learning about different weapon types. Korvax showed them energy blades that could cut through starship hulls. He demonstrated crystal weapons that could change shape during battle. He explained bioweapons that grew stronger as they fought. During lunch break, the humans sat together in the cafeteria. Other students gave them space, still unsure about these new creatures. "Did you see how the other species looked at us?" Someone asked. They think we are weak. We do not have natural weapons like they do, Dong-hyuk said. No crystal manipulation, no fire control, no built-in technology. That might not be a bad thing, Jinho said quietly. The others looked at him with surprise. What do you mean? Mirai asked. All their weapons depend on their natural abilities. What happens if they lose those abilities or find themselves in a place where they do not work? Before anyone could answer, Korvax appeared at their table. The humans tensed up, not sure what to expect. Tomorrow we begin the real work, the instructor said. I hope you humans are ready to prove you belong here. After he left, the humans sat in nervous silence. The academy suddenly felt much bigger and more dangerous than before. That evening, Jinho lay in his bed and looked out the window at the alien stars. He thought about home and his family's farm. His father had always said that the best tool was the one you could make from whatever was around you. Maybe that wisdom would help him here. The other students had incredible natural abilities, but humans had something different. They had the ability to see possibilities where others saw only problems. Tomorrow would begin to test whether that was enough. As he fell asleep, Jinho did not know that this simple human trait would soon change how everyone at the academy thought about weapons and warfare. The next morning brought excitement and worry to the academy. Instructor Korvax stood before the class with his arms crossed over his chest. Behind him, a large screen showed images of weapons from across the galaxy. Today you receive your final assignment for this course, Korvax announced. You have 3 days to forge a weapon worthy of your heritage. Show me what makes your species' warriors legendary. A Vorthak student named Thais raised her crystal hand. May we use the Academy's forges and workshops? You may use any facility in this academy, Korvax replied. But remember, this is not about using our tools. This is about showing your species' true nature. The Parathi student called Blazon stood up. His red skin glowed brighter with excitement. Will we be judged on power or craftsmanship? Korvax smiled, showing sharp teeth. You will be judged on how well your weapon represents what your people truly are. When class ended, students rushed out to begin their preparations. The Vorthak students went to the crystal gardens where they could sing to the living stones. The Parathi headed to the stellar chambers where artificial stars burned hot enough to melt any metal. The Zephyrian students moved toward the biolabs where they could grow weapons from living tissue. The 4 humans walked slowly back to their dormitory. They did not rush like the others because they did not know where to begin. What is our heritage? Mirai asked as they sat in Jinho's room. Humans have used so many different weapons throughout history. Dong-hyuk opened his tablet and began searching through human military history. We have swords from Asia, axes from Europe, spears from Africa, bows from the Americas. Every culture developed different weapons. Maybe that is our heritage, Soman suggested. We adapt to any situation. But how do we forge one weapon that shows all of that? Mirai asked. They spent hours debating. Mirai wanted to recreate a traditional Korean sword like her ancestors had made. She knew the old techniques her grandfather had taught her. Dong-hyuk thought they should build something high-tech that showed human engineering skills. Salman believed they should make something that combined fighting styles from around Earth. Jinho listened to his friends argue but said little. He was thinking about the assignment differently. Korvax had said to forge a weapon worthy of their heritage, not to forge a weapon using traditional methods. While the others planned, students from other species began their work. Through the dormitory windows they could see lights and hear sounds from across the campus. The Vorthak crystal gardens filled with strange music as students sang to shape their weapons. The stellar chambers glowed brighter as Parathi students heated their forges. The biolabs pulsed with green light as Zephyrian students grew their living weapons. On the second day, the humans split up to work on their individual projects. Mirai went to the metal workshops to begin forging her sword. She had requisitioned traditional materials and tools. The Academy's alien smiths watched with curiosity as she heated the metal and began the slow process of folding and shaping it. Dong-hyuk headed to the technology labs. He had designed an energy rifle that could change its power output and firing mode depending on the situation. The weapon would show human adaptability through its versatility. He worked carefully, connecting circuits and calibrating energy matrices. Soman found space in the combat training rooms. She was building a staff that could be used in multiple fighting styles. She had studied martial arts from around Earth and wanted to create a weapon that honored all of them. The staff could separate into two shorter weapons or extend for longer reach. Jinho did something that surprised everyone. He went to the library. While his friends worked with hammers and energy tools, Jinho read about weapons throughout galactic history. He studied how different species approached warfare. He learned about weapons that had been forgotten and fighting styles that had died out with their creators. The more he read, the more he understood something important. Every species in the galaxy had become very good at one type of weapon. The Vorthak had perfected crystal manipulation over thousands of years. The Parathi had mastered fire weapons since their species began. The Zephyrians had spent centuries growing and improving their biotechnology. But this specialization also made them limited. A Vorthak warrior was almost helpless without crystals to manipulate. A Parathi fighter could not work in environments where fire would not burn. A Zephyrian soldier needed specific biological materials to create weapons. Humans were different. They had never specialized in one type of weapon because they had never needed to. Human history was full of people who picked up whatever was available and turned it into a weapon. A farmer could grab a pitchfork and become a soldier. A worker could use a hammer as a war club. A child could throw rocks with deadly accuracy. That evening, Jinho met with his friends in the common room. They were tired from their work, but excited to share their progress. "The sword is coming along well," Mireille said. "The metal has folded properly and the edge will be very sharp." "My energy rifle can switch between 12 different firing modes," Donghyuk reported. "It will work in almost any environment." "The staff balances perfectly," Somin added. "I can use it for striking, blocking, or throwing techniques." "What about you, Jinho?" Mireille asked. "We have not seen you in any of the workshops." Jinho looked around the common room. It was late, and most other students had gone to their dormitories. The room was quiet except for the soft hum of the academy systems. Old furniture filled the space, chairs and tables that had been used by thousands of students over the years. "I have been thinking about what makes humans special," he said. "And?" Somin asked. "We are the only species that never needed to evolve natural weapons," Jinho explained. "Other species have claws or energy projection or crystal manipulation. We just have our hands and our brains." "That sounds like a weakness, not a strength," Donghyuk said. "Is it?" Jinho asked. He stood up from his chair, which creaked under his weight. The chair was old and had been repaired many times. What if the greatest weapon is not having a greatest weapon? His friends looked confused, but Jinho was beginning to understand something important. As he shifted his weight, the old chair creaked again. One of the legs was loose and wobbled when he moved. Tomorrow was the last day before they had to present their weapons. Tomorrow, Jinho would discover what it truly meant to be human in a galaxy full of specialized warriors. The third day dawned gray and cloudy on Nexus Prime. Tomorrow would be presentation day and the academy buzzed with nervous energy. Students from every species were putting finishing touches on their weapons. The sound of hammering came from the forges. Strange lights flashed from the biolabs. Crystal songs echoed from the gardens. Jinho woke up early and walked through the campus. He watched his classmates work with intense focus. Thais, the Vorthak student, had been singing to her crystal for 3 straight days. The weapon was beautiful, a blade of living crystal that changed colors and hummed with inner power. When she moved it through the air, it left trails of light behind. In the stellar chambers, Blazon had forged a sword that burned with the heat of a star. The weapon was so hot that special containers were needed just to hold it. The blade could cut through almost any material known to the galaxy. Other Parathi students watched with respect as he worked. The Zephyrian student Nexus had grown something that looked more like a living creature than a weapon. The bioweapon could change its shape and properties based on what it was fighting. It could become hard as metal or soft as liquid. It could produce toxins or healing compounds depending on need. Jinho's human friends were also making good progress. Mireille had completed her sword, and it was a work of art. The blade was perfectly balanced and the edge was sharp enough to cut paper with just a touch. She had engraved Korean characters along the blade that told the story of her family's military service. Donghyuk had finished his energy rifle and was testing its different modes, The weapon could fire stunning bolts, cutting beams, or explosive charges. It had sensors that could analyze targets and automatically choose the best firing mode. The other students were impressed by its advanced technology. Soman had crafted a beautiful staff that showed the influence of many earth martial arts. It could be used for striking in the Korean style, spinning in the Chinese tradition, or thrusting like a Japanese spear. The weapon felt like an extension of her own body when she practiced with it, but Jinho still had no weapon to show. That evening, the four humans met in the common room to discuss their final preparations. The room was quieter than usual because most students were busy with last-minute work on their weapons. "Jinho, you need to start working," Mireille said with worry in her voice. "The presentation is tomorrow morning." "Maybe you could help one of us improve our weapons," Dong-hyuk suggested. "You could be part of our team." The assignment was individual, Soman reminded him. Each student needs their own weapon. Jinho sat in his usual chair, the old one that creaked and wobbled. He was thinking about everything he had learned over the past 3 days. All around the galaxy, species had spent thousands of years perfecting their weapon-making skills. They had traditions passed down through generations. They had special materials and techniques that were unique to their worlds. Humans had none of that. They were new to the galaxy and had no ancient traditions of weapon forging. They had no special materials from their home world. They had no natural abilities that made certain weapons easy to create. "What if that is exactly what makes us special?" Jinho said out loud. "What do you mean?" Mireille asked. "Every other species is limited by their traditions and natural abilities," Jinho explained. "They can only make certain types of weapons because that is all they know." "But we do not have any traditions," Dong-hyuk said. "We are starting from nothing." "Exactly," Jinho replied. He leaned forward in his chair and it creaked loudly. "We are not limited by what we are supposed to do. We can do anything." As he spoke, Jinho shifted his weight again. The old chair had been used by thousands of students over the years. The joints were loose and the wood was worn. With a sharp crack, one of the chair legs broke and Jinho tumbled to the floor. His friends rushed to help him up, but Jinho was staring at the broken chair leg in his hand. It was about as long as his arm and had a pointed end where it had snapped off. The wood was hard and smooth from years of use. "Are you hurt?" Soman asked. Jinho did not answer immediately. He was holding the chair leg and testing its weight and balance. Without thinking, he gripped it like a spear and made a few practice thrusts through the air. The piece of wood felt natural in his hands. "Jinho, what are you doing?" Mireille asked. "Making a weapon," he said simply. "That is just a broken piece of furniture," Dong-hyuk protested. "Is it?" Jinho asked. He held up the chair leg and examined it carefully. "This piece of wood has a sharp point for thrusting. It has the right length for keeping enemies at a distance. It has good balance for quick movements. What makes it different from a spear?" "A spear is made to be a weapon," Soman said. "That was made to be part of a chair. But now it is not part of a chair anymore," Jinho replied. "Now it is whatever I need it to be." His friends looked at each other with concern. They thought the stress of the assignment was making Jinho act strangely. "You cannot present a broken chair leg as your weapon," Mireille said gently. "The other students will laugh at you. Instructor Korvax will fail you." "Maybe," Jinho admitted. "But maybe they will understand something important." He stood up and demonstrated how the makeshift spear could be used. He showed thrusting attacks, defensive blocks, and even how it could be used as a tool for reaching high places or prying open doors. "Every other student spent 3 days creating something new," Jinho said. "I spent 5 minutes turning something broken into something useful." "Which approach is more practical in a real emergency?" "But it is just wood," Dong-hyuk said. "Thice's crystal weapon can cut through metal. Blazen's fire sword can melt through armor. Your chair leg cannot compete with weapons like that." "In a direct fight, you are right," Jinho agreed. "But what happens when Thice runs out of crystals to manipulate? What happens when Blazen finds himself in a place where fire cannot burn? What happens when Nexus's bioweapon gets sick or injured?" He held up his simple wooden spear. "This will work anywhere, anytime, with no special conditions needed. It will also break if you hit something hard with it," Soman pointed out. "Then I will find another chair leg," Jinho said with a smile. "Or a table leg, or a broken pipe, or a strong branch. The weapon is not this specific piece of wood. The weapon is the idea that anything can become a weapon if you know how to use it." His friends sat in silence, trying to understand what Jinho was thinking. Outside the window, They could see light still burning in workshops around the campus as other students put final touches on their elaborate weapons. "You are really going to present that tomorrow?" Mirai asked. "Yes," Jinho said confidently. "And I think it will teach everyone something important about what it means to be human." Presentation day arrived with bright morning light streaming through the academy's tall windows. The Great Hall had been prepared for the weapon demonstrations. Seats were arranged in a large circle around a central area, where students would show their creations. Faculty members from across the academy had come to watch. Even the academy's commander, an ancient being whose species Jinho did not recognize, sat in the place of honor. Students filed into the hall carrying their weapons with pride. The Vorthak students held crystal weapons that sang softly and cast rainbow patterns on the walls. The Parathi students carried their fire weapons in special containers that glowed with inner heat. The Zephyrian students brought bioweapons that moved and shifted like living creatures. The four humans entered together, but they looked very different from each other. Mirai carried her sword in a beautiful scabbard decorated with traditional Korean patterns. Dongyuk had his energy rifle in a carrying case filled with technical displays. Soman held her martial arts staff with confidence and grace. Jinho walked in carrying his broken chair leg. Whispers and pointing followed the humans as they took their seats. Other students stared openly at Jinho's simple wooden weapon. Some laughed quietly to themselves. Others looked confused as if they could not believe what they were seeing. Instructor Korvax entered the hall, and all conversation stopped. He wore his full ceremonial armor, which made him look even more impressive than usual. His yellow eyes swept across the assembled students and their weapons. "Today you will demonstrate what you have learned about your heritage," Korvax announced. "Each weapon should tell us something important about your species and your approach to warfare." The presentations began with the Vorthak students. Thais stepped into the center of the hall with her crystal weapon. The blade was beautiful beyond description, shifting through colors that had no names in any human language. When she moved it through practice forms, the weapon sang in harmonies that made everyone in the hall feel peaceful and strong at the same time. "This blade represents the unity of our people," Thais explained. "It was grown through the combined songs of my family across 3 generations. It connects me to all Vorthak who came before and all who will come after. The weapon could cut through metal targets like they were made of paper." When Thais demonstrated its power, the crystal blade left no mark on itself but sliced through everything else with perfect precision. The faculty members nodded with approval. This was clearly the work of a master craftsperson, showing deep understanding of Vorthak traditions. Next came Blazon with his fire sword. The Parathi student had to wear special protective gear just to handle his own weapon. The blade burned with heat that made the air around it shimmer and dance. "This weapon holds the fury of our star," Blazon said proudly. "It was forged in the heart of a stellar furnace and tempered with the rage of my ancestors. No armor can withstand its touch and no enemy can face its light." He demonstrated by melting through several metal targets. The fire sword turned solid steel into glowing liquid in seconds. The heat was so intense that students in the front rows had to move back. Again, the faculty was impressed. The weapon showed mastery of Parathi fire control and their warrior traditions. The Zephyrian student Nexus presented next. Her bioweapon was disturbing to look at. It seemed to be alive and aware of its surroundings. The weapon moved on its own, reaching toward targets and changing its shape based on what it encountered. "This symbiont was grown from my own genetic material," Nexus explained. "It learns from every battle and adapts to any threat. It represents the Zephyrian mastery of biological warfare and our unity with all living things." The bioweapon demonstrated its abilities by transforming into different shapes. It became a sword when facing solid targets, turned into a net when dealing with multiple opponents, and shifted into a shield when protecting its wielder. The faculty members were fascinated by the weapon's intelligence and adaptability. When it came time for the human presentations, the atmosphere in the hall changed. Everyone was curious to see what the new species would create. Mirai went first. She drew her sword with fluid grace and began demonstrating traditional Korean sword techniques. The blade was perfectly crafted and her movement showed years of training and practice. "This weapon represents the discipline and honor of my family's military tradition," she explained. "Every fold in the metal tells the story of Korean warriors who came before me. The techniques I use have been passed down through generations of soldiers who protected their people. Her demonstration was flawless. The sword cut through targets with precision, and her forms showed deep understanding of martial arts principles. The faculty appreciated both the craftsmanship and the cultural knowledge she displayed. Dongyuk presented his energy rifle next. The weapon was sleek and advanced, with displays showing its many different capabilities. "This rifle represents human innovation and adaptability," he said. "It can change its function based on any tactical situation, stunning, cutting, explosive, or non-lethal. It adapts to whatever the mission requires." He demonstrated the weapon's 12 different firing modes, each one designed for specific situations. The rifle could work in different environments and against various types of opponents. The faculty was impressed by the technical complexity and practical design. Soman showed her martial arts staff last among the humans. She moved through forms that combined fighting styles from across Earth, showing how the weapon could be used in many different ways. "This staff honors the fighting traditions of all Earth cultures," she explained. "It can be used for striking like a Korean jangbong, spinning like a Chinese gun, or thrusting like a Japanese yari. It shows that humans can learn from each other and combine different approaches." Her demonstration was beautiful and practical at the same time. The staff seemed to flow like water as she changed between different fighting styles, showing how human martial arts could work together. By this point, many students and faculty members were impressed with the human presentations. The weapons showed good craftsmanship, practical thinking, and respect for tradition. Then it was Jinho's turn. He stood up and walked to the center of the hall, carrying his broken chair leg. The laughter that had been quietly building among the students became louder. Some aliens pointed and made comments in their own languages. Even some faculty members looked confused or amused. Jinho stood calmly in the center of the circle, holding his simple wooden weapon. The laughter continued for several moments before Instructor Korvax raised his hand for silence. "Explain yourself, human," Korvax said in his deep voice. The hall became completely quiet. Everyone waited to see what Jinho would say about his broken piece of furniture. Jinho looked around the silent hall. Every eye was focused on him and his simple wooden weapon. He could see amusement on many faces, confusion on others, and what looked like embarrassment on the faces of his human friends. 3 days ago, this was part of a chair, Jinho began, holding up the broken leg. Students sat in it while they studied. It held their weight and helped them learn. Yesterday it was broken furniture, something to be thrown away as useless. He paused and looked directly at Instructor Korvax. Today it is a weapon. Tomorrow, if I need it to be, it could become a tool, a lever, a measuring stick, or kindling for a fire. More laughter rippled through the hall. A Parathi student called out, "That is not a weapon, human. That is garbage." Jinho smiled calmly. "Let me show you what it is." He moved to the center of the demonstration area and began to work with his makeshift spear. His movements were not as polished as the other students, but they were practical and effective. He showed how the pointed end could thrust at targets. He demonstrated defensive blocks and parries. He used the length of the weapon to keep imaginary enemies at a distance. "As a weapon, it works," he said simply, "but watch what else it can do." Jinho walked to the wall where several control panels were mounted too high for most students to reach easily. He used his wooden spear to press buttons and activate switches. He showed how it could be used to open doors by working the handles. He demonstrated using it as a lever to move heavy objects that would normally require multiple people to lift. In the Academy's workshop, this could check the depth of hot metal in a forge, he continued. In the biolabs, it could handle dangerous specimens from a safe distance. In space, it could probe unknown materials or activate controls while wearing a bulky suit. The laughter in the hall was starting to fade. Students were beginning to pay closer attention to what Jinho was showing them. "But that is not the important part," Jinho said, stopping his demonstration. "The important part is that 3 days ago, none of you would have looked at that chair and seen a weapon. You would have seen furniture. Just furniture." He gestured toward the elaborate weapons the other students had created. "Your crystal blade is beautiful, Thys, but what happens when you are captured and taken away from all crystals? Your fire sword is powerful, Blazon. But what happens when you must fight in a place where fire cannot burn? Your bioweapon is intelligent, Nexus, but what happens when it gets sick or dies?" The hall was completely quiet now. Even the faculty members were listening intently. "Every weapon here depends on special materials, specific environments, or unique abilities," Jinho continued. They are perfect for certain situations, but useless in others. They make you powerful, but they also make you limited. He held up his simple wooden spear again. This chair leg teaches a different lesson. It shows that the greatest weapon any warrior can have is not the sharpest blade, or the most powerful energy beam. The greatest weapon is the ability to see weapons everywhere. Jinho walked over to where other pieces of furniture sat around the edges of the hall. This table leg could become a club. These metal pipes could become spears. That broken glass could become cutting tools. These fabric banners could become binding ropes. He turned back to face the assembled students and faculty. While all of you were learning to create one perfect weapon, humans were learning something different. We learned to see the potential in everything around us. That is primitive thinking, a Vorthak student said. Why use crude materials when you can have perfected weapons? Because perfected weapons can be taken away from you, Jinho replied. They can break or run out of power or be lost. But the ability to make weapons from anything cannot be taken away. It goes with you wherever you go. Instructor Korvax had been silent throughout the demonstration, but now he stepped forward. His yellow eyes studied Jinho carefully. Explain the heritage this represents, Korvax said. Humans did not survive on Earth because we were the strongest or the fastest, Jinho answered. We survived because we could adapt. When we had no claws, we picked up rocks. When we had no fire, we learned to make it. When we had no natural weapons, we turned everything into weapons. He gestured to his fellow humans. Mirai's sword shows our respect for tradition and discipline. Dongyuk's rifle shows our love of innovation and technology. Salman's staff shows how we learn from each other and combine different ideas. All of these are part of human heritage. But my chair leg shows something more basic, Jinho continued. It shows that humans never accept being helpless. No matter where we are or what we have, we will find a way to survive and fight. That is what makes us dangerous. Not our weapons, but our refusal to be without weapons. The hall remained silent for a long moment. Then unexpectedly, Instructor Korvax began to laugh. It was not the mocking laughter of the students, but something deeper and more genuine. In 500 years of teaching, Korvax said, his voice carrying to every corner of the hall, I have seen thousands of students create weapons. I have watched species demonstrate their greatest achievements in warfare and technology. He walked over to where Jinho stood and examined the broken chair leg closely. But you are the first student to understand what I was really teaching. The instructor turned to address the entire hall. The assignment was not to create the most powerful weapon or the most beautiful one. It was to show me what makes your species survive in a hostile galaxy. He pointed to the elaborate weapons the other students had made. These weapons are impressive, but they tell me about your technology and your traditions. They do not tell me about your hearts. Korvax looked back at Jinho. This broken piece of wood tells me that humans will never surrender. It tells me that you will fight with anything, anywhere, anytime. It tells me that defeating humans requires destroying every human, because the last one will still find a way to fight back. The instructor's expression became serious. That is the most terrifying weapon of all. He turned back to the assembled students and faculty. The human receives the highest mark for this assignment, not because his weapon is the most powerful, but because he understood what power really means. As students and faculty began to leave the hall, many stopped to look more closely at Jinho's simple wooden spear. What had seemed like a joke an hour ago now looked different to them. Later that day, the four humans sat together in their dormitory. Mirai, Donghyuk, and Soman were still processing what had happened in the demonstration. I am sorry I doubted you, Mirai said to Jinho. I thought you had given up. I thought you were going to embarrass all humans, Donghyuk admitted. Instead, you taught the entire academy something new. What will you do with the chair leg now? Soman asked. Jinho looked at his makeshift weapon, then out the window at the alien stars. I think I will keep it as a reminder, not of what humans can build, but of what humans can become. Word of the humans' demonstration spread quickly through the academy. Soon, students from other species were looking at their surroundings with new eyes. They began to see potential weapons and tools in ordinary objects. Some even started practicing with improvised weapons alongside their traditional ones. The broken chair leg had taught them all an important lesson about survival, adaptability, and the human spirit. In a galaxy full of specialized warriors, the most dangerous fighters might be the ones who refuse to specialize at all.